goosebumps every time, yeah, 713. Through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low-key. I'm sipping low-key and honest, flying rider. I get those goosebumps every time.
Newcastle United.
I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype, throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around me, throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time.
Up the mugs, yes sir.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC. We are back again for another fully loaded transfer show, talking all things Newcastle United, and we'll be talking a little bit as well about the match today. We might even start with that. But Chris, you're with me tonight. Dad's still on holiday. How are things, mate? How are you?
All right, mate. Yeah, been busy today, but yeah, I'm good. I'm just a little bit. I'm still trying to process all of the information from the past week, and I've got a few more thoughts, which obviously I can share with you, Pete, while we're on, and I'm sure you've got many thoughts as well. So yeah, lots to talk about. Varying different opinions and feelings. I am definitely, Pete, without a shadow of a doubt, I am definitely on the emotional roller coaster. I've been angry, I've been upset, I've been disappointed, I've been buoyant. Maybe a little bit naive, maybe a little bit I don't know. Oh, just so many emotions, so many emotions. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. But Pete, how are you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Just with myself, I'm okay. But look, in terms of being a Newcastle United fan and what's going on at the moment, yeah, it's not the best at this moment in time. No. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, something needs to change, something needs to get better, and it doesn't quite seem to be doing that at the moment. But let's see what happens in the next week is what I'll say, and we'll kind of leave that there. But people in the chat, already over 300 in the chat. Great to have you in there. Make sure you do all those good stuff as always and hit that like button. Thank you for coming in and showing your support for Loaded Mag NUFC. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing as well. And yes, thank you very much for all your support. I will move forward
Pete, with. Just before you do, I just want to point this out. And I know we were discussing it pre-show. For some reason, we can't see any chat. So I'm just putting that out in case people are wondering why we're not bringing anything up on screen. So for some reason, I don't know whether it's a YouTube issue. I assume it probably is, but we cannot see any comments. So we're going to keep ourselves updated, probably, Pete, on our phones, I'm sure. But yeah, just to let you know, within the function on YouTube, we can't see any of the chats. I'm just letting everybody know in case we don't go to questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, very, very good point. And I've already seen a super chat come in from Dominic, and it's really frustrating that I can't even put it up on the screen, but a $49.99 super chat in there. So thank you so much, Dominic. A huge supporter of the channel. And Dominic says this, he says, guys, you should open it up and let the fans call in. We can then get some Discord going. And yeah, it's a great shout. Something that we may well consider doing later on down the line. Having people come on and sharing their opinions. Something to hold on to. But thank you for that suggestion, Dominic. We will definitely consider that as a 3, and yeah, maybe look to do something like that in the future. Let's wait and see. But thank you so much for your super chat. Huge support in that. Look, Chris, I'm going to come to it to begin with, just to kind of get it up there as an early discussion. We have to touch on a little bit the game today against Arsenal in Singapore. We did lose 3-2 to Arsenal. Obviously, 2 varying different teams. I think one played something like 50, 60 minutes, and then the changes started to ring in. Goals from Anthony Elanga on his debut. Jacob Murphy then made it 2-2 after a couple of goals from Arsenal, and then Arsenal got the winning goal from the spot late on. There were some little bit of concerns around Sven Botman. He only lasted 25 minutes in the second half, but a positive update there about Sven Botman from Craig Hope, saying that if it was a competitive game or a league game, he wouldn't have come off. Purely precautionary in that kind of conversation there. Chris, your thoughts on the game and what you watched today? What did you make of it? Obviously, we didn't win. Result doesn't always matter, but your general thoughts of what you watched, mate.
Yeah, so in general thoughts, I was actually reasonably pleased with it, actually. Having watched the full Celtic game, I was a little bit alarmed. Today's performance was much better, against far better opposition as well, in an even sunnier climate than Glasgow. But no, I thought the lads performed pretty well on the whole. I was encouraged. It was nice to see some much needed minutes getting into the players' legs. Obviously, great to see Joe Litton in there. Anthony Gordon obviously started, same as Anthony Elanga. Anthony Elanga ended up getting his goal as well, which Sandro Tonali did very well for. Lovely to see Jacob Murphy come on in the second half and score with his wrong foot. A very good left-footed strike from distance. It was quite a nice goal. But yeah, I mean, I won't critique anyone as such because, it was a pre-season friendly and you could very much tell that. But I thought there were some good performances out there. And like I say, it was good to stretch legs. And I think losing 3-2 to anybody is no shame. Arsenal are a good side, and obviously, they included some new signings as well, and particularly, which we've kind of been pre-warned about, haven't we, Pete? It's particularly you with Dan Potts from 12th Man, I'm sure. But yeah, one of my daughter's friends' dads at the school, also an Arsenal fan, was telling me that there was a young guy to look out for called Max Dowman. And boy, did he announce himself today, because I thought he was absolutely outstanding. But yeah, to focus on Newcastle, as I say, I thought it was a good run out. Very worried about Sven Botman when he went off, I'll be honest. But then obviously hearing what Craig Hope said then, I know you said after the game, Pete, or during the game actually, you weren't too overly concerned, and you were right not to be, because according to Craig Hope, all is okay. And yeah, with anything especially at pre-season, you can't take risks with anybody, can you? So I think him coming off was probably the right decision. But it's good to hear that if it was a competitive game, that he probably would have stayed on. So that shows you how minor it is. But the biggest overarching concern for me, Pete, which won't come as a surprise, is albeit I thought Will Asula looked bright. I thought he looked okay at parts. We need more options up front. Sean Neve came on in the second half, I believe. And again, another prospect. I'd probably file him in the same bracket as the likes of Ben Parkinson, but certainly Premier League ready. And yeah, there was a gaping hole in that number 9 position. But we all know this is nothing new. So I suppose that was my biggest takeaway. But like I say, great to see lots of lads getting the minutes in. Bruno, Joe Linton, and the likes, Sandro Tonali. So it was great. And yeah, that was my overarching feeling. I didn't come away from the game feeling disheartened or downbeat. I just thought, okay, good run out for the lads, and on to the next one. What about you, Pete? What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting one. I was actually really, really pleased because I wanted to see a reaction from the players, mate. I wanted to see a reaction from the players after the really, really poor performance against Celtic, in my opinion. And I felt like I did get that. Of course, there is things to work on. Of course, certain players didn't play as well than others in the game. That's what you expect in pre-season. Some people give you an example. I think Bruno Guimaraes has started seamlessly well in pre-season. I thought it was excellent against Celtic, one of the highlights of performances. In addition to that, I thought he played really well again today. So that is pleasing, but then there's other players that need a little bit more work. But from what I've seen from the team, filming with confidence that we're going in the right direction in terms of the players that we've got there. I said it and I tweeted out something similar, and I got back, we need this position, we need that position. Of course we do. We need signings. I said we need 6 signings this summer. We've only got 1. We need 5 more. That goes without saying. We need signings through the door. But the players that we've currently got in the team, ready and available, there were some good performances in there. So that pleased me as well. What also pleased me is that, the intensity was back in the game. I saw that really intense press and running ability from the likes of Anthony Elanga, who I thought was good again for the time he was on the pitch. I thought Anthony Gordon was much better in his high press, running, chasing, committing players, working back and defending. That's the kind of Anthony Gordon that we saw a couple of years ago. So that was pleasing to see, albeit in 45 minutes, but still pleasing to see. Obviously, 1 or 2 mistakes. You could see the goal was coming, the equaliser, because the players just looked like they started to fatigue slightly for 5 minutes, giving the ball away really, really kind of like easily and really cheaply. And then Arsenal just took advantage of it. Remember, Arsenal have already played a game over there. They've been over there a lot longer, been trained over there a lot longer. So they've acclimatized to that environment a lot quicker than we have, and have been there longer to do so. So all of those factors played a part. I thought we were better, though, in the second half. I actually thought we were good in the second half, and for long spells, we actually looked the more dangerous of the 2 teams, and that filled me with confidence too. So for me, I just feel like we are sort of going in the right direction here. So that was pleasing. Disappointing to concede the late goal. I thought it was a soft penalty. Like you said, Max Dowman, I thought was absolutely superb. 15 years old, sensational performance. And the fact that a lot of Newcastle players went up to almost kind of congratulate him on his play and his ability just shows the respect that I think opposition players had for him today because of how young he is and how good he was. But I thought, it was a bit of a soft penalty, and it is what it is. I don't hold on to the score too much. I saw a lot of positivity. That fills me with confidence. When we go over to Hong Kong, we play Tottenham, and I think it's like the All-Star 11. That's when I want us to see us kick on against lesser teams than Arsenal and really give them a good game. Now we're up to speed on that. But lots to be positive about in terms of that performance. Lots of work still to be done. And I think if I'm Eddie Howe, I'm coming away from that thinking, okay, that Celtic game was a bit of a blip, and we're where I kind of wanted us to be. So let's hope that the players kick on from that. But that was kind of my overriding thoughts on that. That kind of brings us on to a conversation here with regards to Eddie Howe, because Craig Hope and others that were in the press conference after the game were asking Eddie Howe a number of different questions. And one of them from Craig Hope was about signings. Are signings coming? Are there any close? The need for signings. And Eddie Howe says, we're not deluded. We know we need to bring players in. We've known that. We know what we want or what we've wanted. It's been a challenging window. And boy, has it been a challenging window. Another question that was asked was around the man that we'll kind of start talking about in just a second before we come on to the next part of the transfer talk, is Eddie Howe says there's no chance that Alexander Isak will join the club in their Far East tour over the next 7 days or so. There is no change in his situation at this moment in time. But there could be, Chris, because I'll just run through these. We did have the talk of Al Hilal. That has been kind of crossed out by Fabrizio Romano. That's not happening. Ben Jacobs has already said no to that one. And on top of that, I thought this was quite interesting, but it's developed since this point. Paul Joyce, who is very well renowned for reporting on Liverpool and Everton and very factual in his reports. He's put that Liverpool retain interest in Alexander Isak, but we, Newcastle, so far have said he's not for sale. That may well change because of the news that came out just earlier. Is that Fabrizio Romano has reported that Luis Diaz is on his way to FC Bayern Munich. And what that might mean, as Keith Down is put in here, is that could potentially have a knock-on effect on Liverpool's pursuit on Alexander Isak. And what the thoughts are now on the back of that is that bid for Alexander Isak from Liverpool could be imminent, and it could be happening very, very soon. What do you make of the situation then with Alexander Isak? Now I've just kind of ran through the little bits that have happened over the course of the day, Chris, to kind of update to where we're at with Alexander Isak. Do you expect a bid coming in? Or what is your opinion? What is your stance currently on Alexander Isak? Will he stay? Will he go? Does the Luis Diaz have an effect in your opinion? What are your thoughts, mate?
Oh, God, I've had so many different thoughts over the past, 48, 72 hours. And I'm trying my best to try and be calm and measured in my response. But I don't think my thoughts have changed in terms of Alexander Isak and what Newcastle United should be asking for. I think the price should be set at £150 million. I fully expect, to answer your question, I fully expect Liverpool to make a bid this week, particularly if Luis Diaz does leave, which it certainly looks like he will be. However, I think Newcastle United have got a couple of questions to ask themselves. One, whether or not they're going to maintain and stick to this £150 million price tag, because I am 99% sure that Liverpool will not put an offer in for £150 million. I think it will be somewhere in the region between 120 and 130 million.
Yeah.
That's firmly what I expect them to do. And then I suppose the second question, Pete, is given that we have yet to even replace Callum Wilson, are Newcastle even in a position to allow further exits in that position? And that's not me being pig-headed or, cutting my nose off to spite my face, but it's a realistic point. Like what we saw today was a young Willisula who's 19 or 20, I think. We saw the young Willisula leading the line, and then we saw an even younger Sean Neve come on and attempt to lead the line. And it's a lot for either of those boys to be asked. Really, they should be in and around the first team squad, learning from more experienced pros. And at the moment, obviously, we don't have Callum Wilson and we don't have Alexander Isak. So I'm actually thinking of Newcastle looking at this situation and going, can we actually afford to let Alexander Isak go? And does that make things easier for the club in terms of their stance, where they get back from the European tour? They get back from the tour of Singapore and Korea, and say to Alexander Isak, you're not going anywhere because we cannot replace you. Because at this moment in time, that is what we're struggling to do. There'll be lots of people at home who are saying, that Newcastle aren't bidding enough money. They're being too, they're lowballing too much. Basically, they're not willing to pay the money that is required to get these players. And to a degree, I agree with that. But on the odd occasion, I do think we've also got to be careful that we don't end up vastly overpaying for players. Like just to talk very briefly about Yoan Wisa. Apparently there was a verbal agreement or a gentleman's agreement last season that Yoan Wisa could leave this summer for £26 million. All of a sudden, Brentford have peaked up to 35 million, 40 million, and now there's claims that Brentford will not allow Yoan Wisa to leave for less than 50 million. Now, for a player who's soon to turn 29 in September, for me, I don't think the club can pay 50 million for Yoan Wisa, as much as we'd like him and as much as we want him. And similarly, Pete, even if we were to go and get Yoan Wisa, is it enough? Because then we've got Yoan Wisa and we've got Willisula, and then further down we've got Sean Neve. It's still not enough. We need, in order to replace Alexander Isak or to allow Alexander Isak to leave, we need two strikers. And that's just the reality. And we're struggling to get one, let alone two. I know we'll probably touch on Benjamin Sesko in due course, but yeah. So my overarching feeling on Alexander Isak, I think it's going to be an uncomfortable week, if I'm honest. Lots of rumours which continue. Obviously, the media aren't really helping with that because we get updates what feels hourly, and it does make things really, really difficult. But I don't know. I'm kind of in two camps at the moment. One camp is that I'm thinking, the answer is no, we're not selling him. There's the possibility of a new contract, even though that feels way, way far away now, I appreciate. but maybe getting Alexander Isak to agree to stay for another year and then letting him go for a lower fee at the end of this coming season. I don't know. And then the other half of me is saying, just get him out the door. Just get him out the door and let's bring in some replacements. But the reason I'm feeling so hesitant to kind of say that, that's what my heart's saying, but my head is saying, but we can't bring anybody in. And the season starts on the 16th of August. And you can't bring in a player next week and then just throw them into the starting lineup. Like, we know better than anybody, Eddie Howe likes to integrate his players in, and we've just not had the opportunity to do that. So I feel very, very torn at the moment, Pete, and that answer probably doesn't help really, and it kind of shows how, the different ends of the spectrum that I'm on, because one half of me saying, get the money, we can go out, we can splash the cash, we can bring in players, we can improve the squad, which is what I think we will do eventually. But then the other half of me is going, yeah, but we can't let him go because we can't bring anybody in. And how much more difficult is it going to be to then bring players in when everybody knows that you've got all this money? So it's going to be even harder. Really, it's not a good position. It really isn't. And the final thing I'll end on before I come back to you, Pete, is for me, right now, the way I feel, the biggest priority is to get the senior recruitment team, or the senior team sorted. I want a new CEO. I want a new sporting director, and I want them to be thrust into this and go, this is the problem, fix it. Because at the moment, I don't have the confidence that the current senior team in place are capable of doing that. Because it feels like everybody's taking a back seat, and it's like, oh yeah, Eddie, go on. What are you going to do, Eddie? And Eddie Howe's currently, away with the lads on a tour, trying to prepare them for the season. But it also feels like he's balancing what's going on with the club and then what's going on in Newcastle at home with Alexander Isak, and it's too much. It's too much, and you can see that in the press conference, Pete. And I'll tell you something else. Last thing I'll say, Pete, before I go back to you. I'll tell you something else. What I found fascinating, not only were the players asked for their opinions on Alexander Isak, which I found odd, by the way. I can't believe that was allowed as soon as they arrived. Oh, what do you think on Alexander Isak? And it's like, what are they meant to say? But what I found really interesting was, you'll notice in the press conference with Eddie Howe, and he had Bruno Guimaraes sat next to him. Every time Eddie Howe spoke about Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes turned his head and was listening to every word he said. And that said to me that the players maybe aren't as up to date as what people think as to what the latest position is, because Bruno was intently listening to what Eddie Howe said on the latest position, whether or not because he wanted to hear what he was going to say, or whether it was because, he knows, he's not stupid. He knows what Alexander Isak's done and what Alexander Isak's intentions are. But maybe he's thinking, what are the club going to do about it? A bit like all of us. What are the club going to do about it? What is Eddie Howe going to do about it? And I think that's what we all want to know. But anyway, that was an incredibly long answer, Pete. Apologies for that.
No, I think you've made a really sort of valid point in terms of what you were saying. Just bear with me a second. I think you made a really, really valid point. I just want to point out, just before I give my my opinion, I believe we've had 3 other £50 donations from Dominic. So since the first one, so that's like £150 worth of donation. Dominic, that is absolutely amazing. You've not even put a question in there, man. You've got to put
your questions in, Dominic.
In something worth a converstion for us asking with that level of donation. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support from the channel. Look, we spoke to you, away from the live shows. You're a huge supporter of Loaded Mag NUFC. So a massive thank you to you. Really do appreciate it. And look, we are having to read the comments off the side, so we're not seeing them on ours. I think there's a YouTube issue there, so apologies from our perspective. But Andy H, I have also seen your question around Paqueta and Jackson. We will be coming to that later on in the show, so don't worry about that one. Chippers, remember for 41 months, should I say, media coverage of Isak has pissed me off. To be honest, look, the media coverage has pissed us all off, Chippers. It's pissed us all off because you can see how, it started very positively from Ekitike coming to Newcastle to very much a Liverpool kind of dominant kind of conversation. So everything's really pro Liverpool in terms of how it's being promoted. Partly, Chippers, I have to be honest, is that's down to the fact that Newcastle don't give any information out. You've seen this summer how hard it is for our local journalists and national journalists that report on Newcastle United to get information out of the club themselves. Any information that's coming out from Newcastle isn't coming out from Newcastle directly, and we'll be talking about that on the next conversation of the next player we discuss, because that's another perfect example of that. So that's part of the reason why it's being perceived in a particular way. Big Tank with US $5. Thank you for your donation on that as well. Hot take, but am I the only one who's not that afraid of Liverpool's defence? I feel they can be broken down. We've seen with Madrid's, with Madrid, defence is needed. From Liverpool's point of view, absolutely. We've seen what we've done to them in previous seasons and in previous games. I'm not necessarily worried about Liverpool's defence. If anyone watched the game against AC Milan where they lost 4-2 the other day, a player that really impressed me and stood up and I took notice is Rafa Leão. Rafa Leão absolutely destroyed Van Dijk and the Liverpool defence time and time again. So yeah, nothing to be worried about. Absolutely. Surely that's not another 49 donation. That is absolutely Dominic. I feel like I'm speechless right now. It's another 49.99 donation. That's absolutely sensational. Thank you so much for that. I don't even know what to say. Again, another no comment. Put a comment in, please. Put something in so we could actually see it. Thank you so much. It means the world to us. So any other super chats, we'll come to them straight away. But for me, the Alexander Isak situation, I'm like you, Chris. I'm looking up. I'm looking up beyond Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe is doing things this summer that he should not be doing. He's taking roles and responsibilities that he should not be responsible for. Whose fault's that? For me, I'm looking up. I'm looking up at Darren Eales. Yes, he is unwell, but he has been working his notice for nearly a year now. Okay, what is he doing? Why, if that's the case, why is he still at the club? That's not necessarily on Darren Eales, but I'm looking then at the ownership. Why is he still at the club if he's not able to do what he needs to do? We're in a really tricky moment here, and we need leadership from above to be able to guide us in what we need to be doing. Why is that not happening? Why is this all being put on Eddie Howe? Because it is. People are now pointing the finger at Eddie Howe. And I kind of understand it to a point, because Eddie Howe is the face of all of this. He's the one that we always see doing interviews and answering questions on this. But he shouldn't be answering questions on this. This should be led from above. This whole Isak situation could well have been avoided if we'd have had leadership from the top that had gone, right, this situation's coming, this is how we deal with it. And Eddie Howe's part of that. And he can chip in with his opinion. You've got Darren Eales or whoever CEO there. You've got a sporting director that can come in and others, and you have a conversation. The best clubs deal with these situations properly, and we haven't. And that, for me, is a humbling situation for me. I feel humbled this season because this summer, it showed me that this club is nowhere near ready to be part of that top big six, because you can't just have performances on the pitch. You need to have organisation and structure and quality off it. And we clearly haven't got that. We may well have it in the future, but we certainly don't have it now. So that's the first thing. The second thing, Alexander Isak, in my opinion, I'm sorry, people, we've got well over 600 watching the show tonight already. Alexander Isak for me is gone. It's just a case of when Alexander Isak leaves the club. I don't think he's handled this right. I think there's elements that could have been handled better from him. You've only got to look at Morgan Gibbs-White. Regardless of the fact that he signed the contract, Morgan Gibbs-White, he trained every day. He went on tour with them. He played in preseason matches. He did everything he needed to do. Now, yes, if Alexander Isak's injured, he obviously can't play, he can't fully train, but he could have at least travelled and done the right things and gone on and represented the club until it was time to go. He could have done things the right way. I don't think he has. I could have. I'm now asking myself the question: why didn't Isak? If Isak knew, we did know that he was wanting to go. It's going to come out now that he wanted to go in advance, and this has been an issue for a while now. My question now is that why has Isak not come at the end of the season and had this conversation with the club? Why has he waited to come back to pre-season, travel to Austria, and then had the conversation with them? For me, all of this could have been avoided. Because if Alexander Isak does leave, he could have left 4 or 5 weeks ago. We could have had money in the bank and we could have gone and done our business. We could have been in a much better position now. We could have had signings through the door and we could have kicked on. Those signings that we've missed out on, we could have given a little bit more to those deals because we'd have had the money to do it and the financial capacity to do so, and we could have benefited from it. All of these thoughts are going through my head now about this Alexander Isak situation. But for me, Alexander Isak will leave Newcastle United, in my opinion. I think it's going to take something monumental to change that. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's going to take something monumental to change Alexander Isak from leaving Newcastle United. So for me, in my mind, and I might be wrong in doing this, I'm already prepared for life after Alexander Isak. I'm already looking ahead. I'm already looking ahead to who we're going to bring in and what signings we're going to be working with potentially between now and the end of the window. That's my opinion, and that's kind of where my mind is at right now with the Alexander Isak situation.
Pete,
so it's gone.
Just to add in, we've had another super chat, this time from Peter Griffin, our resident family guy. Love that. And the reason I'm shouting this out, obviously we prioritise super chats, as everybody knows, but Peter is just basically repeating exactly what you've just said, Pete. So clearly on the same page as yourself. Peter says, the media have been trying to sell Isak all summer. Really feel sorry for Eddie because he shouldn't be dealing with all of this, and the timing of all of this has been awful. Yeah,
absolutely.
That is exactly it, isn't it? That's exactly it. Oh, but Peter, thank you very much for your super chat, mate. Much appreciated.
100%. 100% agree. 100% with you on that situation. It is absolutely something that has been kind of construed by the media to paint a picture of this situation. It paints a picture, makes Newcastle look weak and look bad, and we haven't helped ourselves in that, by the way, as a club, but it makes us look even worse. But also it paints the other clubs in a much more positive light, and it's typical that those clubs are Big Six clubs that we've been coming up against, the likes of Manchester United, Chelsea, and now Liverpool. So it's all constructed in a certain way. And it's all down to the fact that they don't give information out from the club. It's as simple as that. So that's where we are in relation to the Alexander Isak situation. Luis Diaz is leaving, is on the way to Bayern. We are braced for a bid, but I'm with you, Chris, and I imagine so many other people are in the chat are with you too, because nobody leaves this club until we have our replacements in. That is the absolute standard and expectation from me, that nobody leaves the club until we have what we need, and then you can go, because that's what proper teams do. Proper teams don't just let their players go and then pick up the pieces afterwards. You think every other club that we then go to is going to add an extra 10, 15 million on to any price tag because they know we've got money. So go and do your business first. Go and secure your business first. And the players that we're going to discuss, hopefully it's going to give us a perspective of where we might well go in the future. Now, just before we carry on,
I was going to say, Pete, we've been inundated with super chats, and thank you, everybody.
Chris, fly through, go through, mate.
Yeah. Big Tank 9401, thank you very much, Big Tank. Big Tank says, most, including me, are mad at Isak because of the timing. He couldn't have chosen a worse time to do this, probably the last day or two of the window. Yeah, I think Big Tank's kind of referring to the fact that maybe that's when Alexander Isak might go. And who knows? But I agree with you, Pete. I think that, and Big Tank, in that we need to make sure that we secure our signings, or the vast majority of them, before we even consider letting Alexander Isak go. And for me, that's bringing in 2 strikers. We have to bring in 2 strikers before we let Alexander Isak go. Not even 1, because what we can't afford to do is bring in, say, for example, we bring in Wisa and then we let Alexander Isak go. We're then left with Wisa and Asule, which isn't enough. It's simply not enough. We've got to go out there and we've got to bring in adequate replacements before we even consider letting Alexander Isak go. Chippers 1990, thank you very much for tuning in as always, Chippers. Chippers says, if Isak wants more wages, he would get his boots on, get his head down and keep playing and get what he deserves and not be a baby about it. I've got to admit, Chippers, when I heard that last line, all I could hear was Roy Keane's voice saying he's just being a big baby.
Big baby.
Big baby. But no, I completely agree with you, Chippers, completely agree. And, Pete mentioned earlier about Morgan Gibbs-White. And really, that is how a professional should act, I would say, because let's not forget, Alexander Isak is not currently on tour with the squad, but I bet you he's still collecting his wages. And I think that's the most disappointing thing. And maybe, who knows, and we'll never know this, but who knows, maybe that is what he's been advised to do. Maybe he regrets the decision. Who knows? Who really knows what's going on in Alexander Isak's head? But for me, I don't know. If it were me, I'd be feeling a little bit guilty right now. I really would.
Do you think he's burnt his bridges with Newcastle United fans, Isak?
I don't think he's burnt his bridges, but I think he's got some way to go in order to heal what's happened. Because for me, I personally feel let down. Even if Alexander Isak was to sign a new deal tomorrow, I would enjoy it very, very much because I would love to have a conversation with my red friends regarding it. But from a personal perspective, I would still feel a bit uncomfortable because I would think to myself, this is all for money. You've done all of this for money. And there's a way of doing it, Pete, because at the end of the day, anybody who hasn't seen Craig Hope's video from, I think it was about 3 days ago, Pete, was it Saturday? Oh, no, it's not 3 days ago. Was it Thursday or Friday he released it?
It might be Friday, I think.
Yeah. If you haven't watched it yet, watch it. It's a fantastic watch. And Craig Hope goes into a bit more detail as to why Alexander Isak is feeling the way he does. And it was funny because after watching the video, and I don't know if you were the same, Pete, I did have a little reflection moment where I thought, do you know what? I understand why Alexander Isak maybe feels a bit hard done by. Lots of broken promises. And that's not right. It's not fair. But there's a way to go about things and there's a way to conduct yourself. And maybe his agents advised him to do this. Maybe he's done it on his own accord. I don't know.
I'm just going to jump in on that because I think this is absolutely agent-led. Like we've watched and seen Alexander Isak behave in a certain way over the last 3 years. This behavior in the last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, isn't, or 2 weeks, should I say? This is not the Alexander Isak that we know. He is absolutely. I'm convinced in my mind that his behavior is purely been advised by whoever his agent is. I'm absolutely convinced of it. These actions and the way he's behaved is massively out of character for what we know of him since he's joined from the club. And actually, if you look back to his history, he's never done this before. I was talking to the 12th man chat and I was like, they were saying, if he puts a transfer request in or if he refuses to travel or refuses to play. And I was like, he's never shown that in his career. He's never acted like this in any other move that he's had. It's always been amicable. Well, he's done something he's never done in his career in the way he's behaving right now. So for me, it can only be agent advised, which is really poor for me. And this is why I have this kind of bitter taste in my mouth with regards to Alexander Isak. If he stays, in my opinion, it is with it's not going to feel the same. No. If he stays, he might still play well and score goals and we'll celebrate because he'll be hopefully winning matches for Newcastle United. I don't think he will stay, but if he does, but it will always have that little thing there for me, which is why I asked the question if the bridges have been burnt. Maybe not burnt, they're maybe on fire right now. They've maybe just been lit at this moment in time. But yeah, that was just kind of one to talk about. I think there's a couple of others.
There's been a couple of others. Yeah, we've had a super chat from A2. Thank you very much, A2. And A2 makes his feelings very clear. A2 says Isak is a Judas. End of story. Legacy destroyed. And do you know what, A2? I see why you feel like that. I really do, because we all absolutely adore Newcastle United, you know, and we would all give our right arm to play and have the opportunity that Alexander Isak's had. And I just feel, do you know what, Pete? Deep down, hand on heart, I think Alexander Isak will regret doing this. I really, really do. Whether he stays or whether he goes, I think he will regret doing it. We've already seen, aren't we? My mates in the chat have mentioned it. You know, Yoan Wisa has gone on strike at Brentford, and people are pointing the finger, going, "Oh, you know, do you want to sign a player who does that? Is that really the right way to conduct yourself?" And I said, well, this is no different to what Alexander Isak's doing. It's no different at all. So you're saying that we should have doubts over signing Yoan Wisa. You should have doubts over signing Alexander Isak, because let's be honest, Pete, if he joins Liverpool, has a really successful 1 or 2 seasons, and then Real Madrid come in, do you think Alexander Isak would hesitate to do it again to get a move to Real Madrid?
No.
I don't.
No. His agent will be advising to exactly the same. It will absolutely happen. And then you'll get Liverpool fans kicking off because he's doing that. Liverpool fans are really interesting because, you know, it wasn't that long ago that they were absolutely going mad at Trent for doing something similar. Like, he wasn't kind of, you know, he wasn't refusing to play or anything like that, but he was clearly angling for a move to Real Madrid, and they didn't like it. So it's all right, you know, them bemoaning that and then encouraging Alexander Isak's situation. Well, if you're going to encourage Alexander Isak's situation as a Liverpool fan, then you shouldn't bemoan Trent going about the business the way he did. He stayed silent, he didn't say anything, he didn't react to anything, and then just quietly announced that he was moving and left. Right, and they didn't like that. They can't have it both ways. Liverpool can't have it both ways as their fan base, you know. And equally, you made a really good point, and it's one we'll come back to when we talk Wisa, because we will be discussing Wisa. Is that we can't have it both ways too with Wisa, because he has refused to play, and we'll come back to that in a second. So don't want to touch too much on that. And obviously the situation with Isak. So you made a good point, because it is a valid one. They are very, very similar.
No, absolutely. And do you know what? I was just going to say, Pete, before we move on to the next super chat. What else I found really interesting about this circumstance is the choice of words. So we've heard, haven't we, that Alexander Isak has stayed at home, stayed at Newcastle, to explore his options. To me, I find that very interesting. You know, people are saying, "Oh, Alexander Isak wants to leave. Alexander Isak's had his head turned by Liverpool. Alexander Isak wants more money." But that's all hearsay. All we've heard as a fact is the fact that Alexander Isak has chosen to stay at home because he wants to explore his options. And to me, I do find that really, really interesting, because that to me feels like it's coming from a point of weakness.
Yeah.
And Craig Hope did emphasise, which I really liked, he emphasised, you know, people are underplaying the value or the power that Newcastle United have. Alexander Isak has 3 years left to run on his deal. Yeah. And Newcastle United haven't managed to bring anybody in yet. That, to me, that is you know, that the cards are firmly in Newcastle's hands. You'll hear a lot of Liverpool fans saying, "Oh, we'll get what we want. We always get what we want. You can't stop him coming." Well, we can, and if we have to, we will. And people won't like that, but that's a reality. And then it will come to a crossroads, Pete, where we reach that point, whether it be a week before the season starts, whether it be 48 hours before the season starts. If this move doesn't happen to Liverpool, Alexander Isak's got a choice to make. He either takes part and is involved in this squad, or he continues to, you know, stay on the sidelines. But if he does that not paint an even poorer picture of him? Does that then, you know, are Liverpool willing to pay the £150 million that Newcastle allegedly wants? Because what if they don't? What if we get to the 1st of September and no deal is struck? Where does Alexander Isak go then?
There you go.
Something to consider. Other super chats.
Rich Doblin was in there.
Yes. Go on, Pete. You read it out, mate. Rich Joblin.
I just need to find it now. I've got it right. He put, Rich Joblin, thank you for your $9.99. How do we cope with Isak lining up against us for our first home game? Genuine question. How are we selling to them? This will hurt. Look, I'll answer that one. Look, it's going to be really difficult to see him wearing red and coming up against us at St. James's Park. How do we cope with it? We create an absolute fire atmosphere. We ramp these boys up to go in. I want Joe Linton absolutely bullying their midfield. I want Botman putting him into row Z. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see from Newcastle United. That's how we deal with it. And what we do, we make it uncomfortable. What we then do is do something we haven't been able to do under Eddie Howe. We win the fucking game. We win and get 3 points. How do we cope with it? That's how we cope with it. It's going to happen. We're going to get used to it. But our first home game at St. James's Park, I want a PSG atmosphere. I want a PSG atmosphere. I want it to be ramped up big time. I want them to know that they're coming into the cauldron. I want them to know that they're coming into battle. And we're not just going to lie down and let it happen and accept it. And hopefully by then we'll have players through the door that can make sure that we hit the ground running. That's what I want to see. What about you, Chris?
Totally agree, mate. I was going to make it a little bit about me there. I was going to say, Rich Joblin, arguably, mate, it could hurt me more than most because a lot of my friends are Reds and they are already, believe me, they are already dining on this. And for Alexander Isak to become a Liverpool player will absolutely kill me, I'll be honest. It really, really will. And very, very quickly, I will go off Alexander Isak if he ends up signing for Liverpool. But yeah, in terms of, how are we going to cope? Exactly as Pete just said, we firmly put it behind us. We bring in the replacements prior to him leaving and we create a siege mentality. We go into that game on the 26th of August and with the attitude, the 25th of August, with the attitude that we are not going to get beat. We turn up and we ensure that it's an absolute cauldron. And do you know what? We do what we need to do. I'm not going to say any more on it because I'm still not sure that he will be a Liverpool player on that date. I don't know. And also, I think as well, what I would imagine is I think if he is to join Liverpool, there will probably be somewhere in the contract where he doesn't play in that game. I'd be highly surprised if he was to play in that game. I've got to be honest. I think it'll be Hugo Ekitike up front. But that's just my opinion. Right, 2 more super chats to get through, Pete. Geniesta Binaldum. Geniesta, thank you so much, mate. Top man. He says, why aren't we flooding the academy with global youth talent? It's cheap, PSR proof, and long-term smart. The fact we're not says plenty about PIF's ambition. What would you say to that, Pete? I mean, personally, I feel like that's something we've improved upon. Could we do more? Absolutely. If we had a sporting director in place and a CEO who was actively, involved in the day-to-day running of the club, and that's no disrespect to Darren Eales, but I kind of feel like he's taken a bit of a back seat, and so he should, because he's not a well man, and he is very much overseeing things while we try to find a replacement. But again, as Pete says, you're looking up. And you're going, well, who's putting the new person in place? Who's in charge of putting the new person in place? And that's the owners. And the fact that hasn't happened, is disappointing. But what are your thoughts, Pete, on what Geniesta says, in terms of bringing in, more global youth talent in the academy?
Well, that's the plan. You look at what Newcastle United have done, bringing in some of the young players that we've got coming through. There were some really young, exciting players coming through from age 15 to sort of 17, 18. We brought some young players in from various different clubs around the country. That's what we're trying to do. But that type of thing takes time.
It takes a lot of time.
The best way to do that is seeing a player actually come through and make it. So like Man City have done it, Chelsea have done it, Man United have done it multiple times. So have Liverpool, so have Arsenal. You bring through a young player and they become a success, whether it's at your club or somewhere else. And any young top player will then know I can make it there because that person made it. And when they see numerous players coming through your process, that's why so many young players go to, like, for example, the likes of Chelsea. That's why so many young players are now going to Man City and historically have gone to Manchester United. Not just because they're traditionally heritage clubs, but the success there, the chance of actually getting through their academy and getting into the first team or getting through and getting a big move elsewhere potentially in the future is successful. You've got a great chance of doing it. Newcastle United haven't got a massive success rate. They've got Longstaff, who's been and gone. You've got Lewis Miley right now that's coming through and in the first team. When you look around, you haven't got that many, and not necessarily that many that have been top level players. We have to have like a success rate before players of a higher caliber turns around and goes, yeah, I'm coming to you. I'm going to be coming to you, and I want to be part of your setup. So that's the way I see it. Is that we just need an example of that before it goes to the next stage. But what about yourself, Chris?
No, I completely agree. It's a slow process, and I do believe that not having the correct people in the more senior posts is having an impact. Because this is what you would expect from Paul Mitchell. We saw little bits of it. The likes of Cordero, the likes of Salia. We started to see these players coming in, which is great. But now that's firmly stopped. But we need to continue that. We need somebody in place to be able to do that. Eddie Howe can't be expected, to run the team, run the training, find the youngsters, bring in the youngsters, negotiate for the youngsters, negotiate for first team players. There's got to be a point where you need more people in to be able to do that. And I know obviously he's been getting help from his nephew, Andy Howe, and Steve Nixon. But Steve Nixon's a scout. He shouldn't really be doing that, but that's obviously the position that we found ourselves in at the moment. And this is why, Pete, why I've been screaming out, particularly this past week, for a new CEO and a new sporting director. We're desperate need of one. We really, really are. And what comes of that, I don't know. But to me, I feel like that arguably is as important as bringing in a new striker. I really, really do. Because we need to lessen the load of Eddie Howe. This can't continue till the end of the window. Because what happens, and I'm not trying to scare anybody out there, but what happens if someone comes in for Tino Livramento? What happens if someone comes in for Sandro Tonali? What happens if someone comes in for Anthony Gordon? At the moment, we've got no infrastructure. There's nothing in place to kind of put to consider the options, to look at the more strategic view. This is why you need senior management. You need to be able to look across the piece and go, right, this is something I need to take on board, and I'll keep my staff members updated. But if the staff members are the ones doing the do, it's got the potential to be absolute chaos. It really, really has. But Pete, before we move on, because I know we've got lots to discuss, and this next super chat and the last one that we've got up to now kind of leads us nicely onto the next section. It comes from Craig Lee. Thank you, Craig, for the super chat. He says, sell Isak, buy Walter Maid and Sesko. Job done. Is it job done, though?
If only it was that easy. If only it was that easy. But interesting names of players. And yes, let's discuss it. Because, look, we weren't going to come to this player first, but we are going to come to him now. Because we have to talk about who the replacement for Alexander Isak is going to be. And there has been a lot of talk about this man, Benjamin Sesko, or Sesko, or however we're meant to pronounce it. We'll hopefully we'll need to figure it out, because hopefully he'll be signing for the club. But let's wait and see. Newcastle United target £70 million Sesko, but insist Alexander Isak is not for sale. That was what was reported before. Fabrizio Romano has been doing lots of talking, and even tonight, and even whilst we've been live, has continued to talk about Benjamin Sesko and Newcastle United. We're continuing to go big for Benjamin Sesko, and that's the emphasis. Fabrizio Romano is saying we are willing to go big on Benjamin Sesko, offering and presenting the project and offering an important salary. Then also talking about that we are trying to do something special with signing Benjamin Sesko. What was then talked about is that this week, meaning next week, this was the other day, being a really, really important week for Benjamin Sesko and his future in terms of a potential move. Now, what made people really intrigued about this is the fact that what we saw is that Philip Hines of Sky Sports, reporting on Bundesliga football, had reported that Leipzig had reached a verbal agreement with Romulo, who is a player who scored 27 goals last season for the team he plays for, Gottstepe, if I'm pronouncing that right, I apologize, for around 25 to 30 million euros. Obviously, it talks about attacking players needing to potentially leave Leipzig, which has then thrown the Sesko situation and conversation in there. I have to say, there has been further movements on Benjamin Sesko since then. Now, one thing that was talked about this morning and reported from the United Stand, and various others have now talked about it. Samsey reports that Benjamin Sesko is open to joining Manchester United, even with the club unable to offer European football next season. And what I will say, Chris, is that's thrown a lot of Newcastle United fans off. As soon as they've seen he's interested in Manchester United, he's gone to Manchester United, game over. And I understand why, because we've lost so many other players because of that reason already this summer. But it's thrown a lot of people off. But that's only reports. There's not been anything substantial off the back of that. I don't know if I've got these in the right order, but I will throw them up on the screen because these are the things that come out most recently in terms of this afternoon on Newcastle United and Benjamin Sesko. So, Newcastle United are expected to receive an answer from Benjamin Sesko this week with regards to the project that's been presented to him about joining Newcastle United. That's come from Fabrizio Romano in his latest video. They've talked about here the same thing, expecting an answer. On top of that, I don't always know whether this reporter is reliable or not, but I've chosen to put it up for that reason. And Chris, you know that because I've spoken to you and Daz about using his information. But a lot of people have jumped on the fact that Nicolo Sierra has said Benjamin Sesko has an agreement in principle with Newcastle for a contract until 2030. They're now working to reach an agreement with Leipzig. So he's reported that this afternoon. What we've also heard from Fabrizio Romano, and this has been whilst we've been live, Chris, just so you know, and people in the chat, is that Fabrizio Romano has quote tweeted his previous tweet about Benjamin Sesko and Newcastle United just in the last few minutes and said Newcastle and Benjamin Sesko talks ongoing as revealed days ago, and this remains the situation as today. Next week, more to follow. Now, in addition to this, Philip Hines, who reports, I've said before, Sky Sports, focus on Bundesliga, has reported, and this came out, and thank you to Big Watson, who alerted me to this. Newcastle United have now entered into negotiations with Benjamin Sesko's agent. The club and the players' camp are in talks, meaning the club, meaning Newcastle, and the agent are in talks. Despite other reports, there is, according to our information, no fundamental verbal agreement yet. So that's in relation to this one here that was put out earlier. However, the Magpies are seriously pushing. Should an agreement be reached, Newcastle will then approach RB Leipzig. They continue to demand a package of around 80 million euros, which is the price that we always knew, worked around 72 million pounds. So that's kind of where we are at this moment in time with regards to Newcastle United. I've just got one more to throw up. Hopefully it lands on my screen. This has been sent to me as well by Big Watson. Thank you very much. This is from a recent video of Fabrizio Romano. meaning whilst we've been live, in addition, there's been movement on Benjamin Sesko, Chris, before we've had a conversation and gone live. Newcastle United to make an official bid are waiting for Benjamin Sesko to see what the player wants to do, but Newcastle will go big on Benjamin Sesko. So as it stands right now, the reports on Manchester United being interested in Manchester United being linked with Benjamin Sesko has mostly come from the United stand. They put out a video, Mark Godbridge put out a video this morning saying they would be interested in that. And that's generated from there. There's been no concrete links. Fabrizio Romano hasn't mentioned Manchester United as a direct interest. He said they could be interested in there and has been mentioned quite fleetingly in that conversation. The main conversation has been Newcastle United and Benjamin Sesko. It looks like it's a big week. As it's been reported there, we're in talks with his agent, and here, Newcastle to make an official bid and are waiting for Benjamin Sesko. So it does look like, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this, that Newcastle United are ready to put the money up. They're ready to offer significant wage to Benjamin Sesko. They just need the okay from Sesko that he wants to join and from his entourage, and then they're going to put the bid in for Benjamin Sesko. That's how it reads right now. How does it read to you, Chris, and how do you, or what do you make of the situation with Benjamin Sesko from what I've just kind of read out on the storyboard, mate?
It's a difficult one. It is really a difficult one. I kind of feel like Benjamin Sesko is a must-do deal. It's a deal that we have to do. We really, really have to do this deal because the striker options, we know the previous striker options, don't we? The players who we've approached previously, we know, the likes of João Pedro, the likes of Hugo Ekitike, struggling to get Yoan Wisa over the line. Benjamin Sesko is a player that we've held interest in for a while now. We've spoke about Benjamin Sesko so many times on Loaded, and I think if we were to sign Benjamin Sesko, I'd be really happy because he is a player who has attracted interest, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, and nobody's really gone all in on him, whether that's because of his price, whether or not it's because some people have a few doubts over him, I don't know. But Benjamin Sesko to me now feels like a deal that we have to do. It's nice to know, Pete, that we do work over the weekends. I mean, that's brilliant news. Because in the last few weekends, it's felt like we don't work on the weekends, but now it appears that maybe we do. Maybe all hands are to the pump. I don't know, but no. In terms as well as the Man United news, I think it was really important that you highlighted that because I saw that this afternoon. I saw a lot of people when I dipped in and out of X. People saying, "Oh, he's going to Man United now. That's it." And clearly from the reports, he would be open to Man United, and that's probably to try and drum up interest and to try and ensure that he can negotiate as high a salary as he possibly can, and that makes perfect sense. Why would he not? Maybe he's decided that he needs to move from Leipzig, and therefore whoever's willing to put the money down for him, great. I still believe that Newcastle is a big pull, and I still believe that the opportunity to lead the line in a Champions League season, I think would tempt Benjamin Sesko to come to Newcastle. And let's not forget, Pete, Man United aren't flush with cash at the moment. We know that they didn't actually get Brian Mbeumo over the line until the Anthony Elanga deal went through because they were due a little cut from that deal. So it's little things like that. So I can't imagine that Man United have 70, 75 million sitting in Sir Jim's back pocket waiting to be spent. And this is why Newcastle need to act now. We've had our fingers burnt, as I've said previously, with other striker targets. I'll add Liam Delap in. I forgot him as well. But now feels like we've got a free, clear runway at Benjamin Sesko. And now it's up to us to ensure that we get that deal over the line. And as I say, if we did, I'd be very excited by it because I think he's a very, very good player, and somebody who would fit nicely in an Eddie Howe team in his system. For me, Pete, it's a deal we've got to do. We really, really have to do because we're edging ever closer to the start of the season, and the sooner that we get recruits in, the better. I think it'll make the fans feel a little bit more at ease. It'll mean that it puts a lot of fears to one side. And also, as well, you could argue it might work out beneficial for the likes of Alexander Isak because it will push him nearer to the door if that's where he wants to go. But then on the other hand, as I've said previously, I still believe we need 2 strikers in before we let Alexander Isak go. So who knows if Newcastle were to bring in Benjamin Sesko, shut the door and say, right, we're going into next season with Alexander Isak and Benjamin Sesko. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's a deal we need to do, people. What about yourself?
This deal with Benjamin Sesko, for me, is absolutely crucial. This is crucial for a number of reasons, in my opinion. I think Benjamin Sesko is absolutely crucial because we've had a terrible summer so far, bar Anthony Elanga, who I think will actually be a really good signing for Newcastle United. I genuinely believe that. But I think in all the other business that we've tried to have failed with, I think it's been a really poor window. I think getting someone, Benjamin Sesko is one of the top young European strikers at this moment in time. If we can get him to Newcastle United, that saves a lot of face. We're getting a lot of shit at the moment for the bad window that we've had. That deal there puts us back in the talking points in a positive light if we get Sesko through the door. I genuinely believe that. Genuinely believe that. And so, therefore, I think it's a massive, massive deal to do. What I will say, and congratulations to England, apparently, I think they won on penalties, the Women's Euros. Again, back-to-back Euro winners. Congratulations to England off the back of that. But what I will say, in addition to that, is I'm going to say something that people might not agree with. I think Benjamin Sesko is actually the deal breaker in Isak leaving the club. I think if Benjamin Sesko signs for Newcastle United, I think Isak leaves. If we don't get Benjamin Sesko, I actually think we keep Alexander Isak. I think Newcastle will dig their heels in. They will keep an unhappy player, and they'll fight off any interest from Liverpool. I genuinely think the deal for Benjamin Sesko is that important. I actually think that's the case, and I think it should be the case as well, Chris. It should be.
Is it enough, Pete? Is it enough in the striker department?
No, we need 2 strikers, mate. We need 2 strikers through the door. I would love the scenario of Sesko and Isak. I would love us to do that. How good would that be in terms of a saving face, in putting our money where our mouth is and getting Benjamin Sesko through the door and then sticking 2 fingers up to Liverpool and go, nah, he's unhappy. That's fine. And actually, you know what, Chris? I would love that from Newcastle United to show our authority again, not just to the club Liverpool, but to the player too. Because what we could absolutely do, it's not going to happen. But what I would love us to do is go get Sesko, say, Isak, nah, you're staying. You've got 3 years left on your deal, you're staying. But we've got a viable boy here that can be our number 9. We can go with Sesko now. And if you're not going to play ball, if you're going to sulk, if you're going to be in an arse, if you're going to wander around and just not put in the effort, you can ride the bench. And we'll go with Sesko as our main man. We'll have him lead the line for us into the Champions League and the Premier League this season. And you play second fiddle until you sort your act out. And you either get a reaction from Isak or you get a stroppy guy that mopes around and we just run with Sesko being the main guy going forward. I would love that because that sends a message to Isak. We're not going to be bullied. We're not going to be pushed around by you. Yes, you're an amazing top-level player. We've got another quality player here that we've just pulled through the door. Another young gun that's got the potential to be one of the best in Europe. We've just signed that guy. And you're not the only one in the club. That's what I would love in an ideal situation, to have that. 2 quality strikers and to have that scenario work out. Because I think he would book up his ideas. I think he would get
I can't rule that possibility out. I really can't. Because and just imagine, you know, the words that keeps getting used between me and my lads, you know, when we're talking in our group, the popular word this window appears to be narrative. And how much does the narrative swing if we go and do what Liverpool did with Hugo Ekitike? They signed Hugo Ekitike and then said, we're coming for Alexander Isak. But imagine if we signed Benjamin Sesko and went, we're keeping Alexander Isak.
Yeah.
2 fingers right back up. to then say to the player, as you rightly said, say to the player, you can go, but not now. You don't go now. You go when we say. And like I say, it's probably a means to an end. It will result in Alexander Isak, not starting the season potentially, because obviously he's missed all of this pre-season. That is a possibility. And some people will say Newcastle are cutting their nose off to spite their face. But at the same time, we're not. We're saying, no, we will sell a player who is under contract at this club for another 3 years when we are ready and when we receive an adequate fee. You hit that 150 million valuation, he can go. If you don't, he's not going.
Yeah.
Because I do firmly believe, Pete, in the next week or so, we will receive an offer, but it won't be anywhere near 150 million. And it's whether or not Newcastle have got the cojones to go, no. Yeah. He's not going for that price. And then to be able to go, well, we've got Benjamin Sesko through the door here. Yeah. So
there could well be a scenario, mate, where we have. It looks like, from everything we're seeing and everything we're hearing from Fabrizio Romano, it looks like Sesko's future is going to be decided this week. I'm not convinced that Alexander Isak's future is going to be decided this week. So there could well be a scenario where we get Sesko through the door and Isak is still technically a Newcastle United player. And it should be that as well, by the way. It should be that. But yeah, there could be a scenario where that happens. I don't think it will, but I think I would love it to be. But that should be a scenario where that happens, where he comes through the door. But the one thing I wanted to stress with the Sesko situation, because I got it when we tweeted out about the show, the responses I got in the comments was Sesko's off to Man United. Sesko wants Man United. Sesko, Man United this. Sesko, Man United that. Well, let's look at the facts here, not just some random accounts that are just posting it. And this is what happened with other situations too. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the people that actually will know what's going on with this situation. Let's look at a reporter from Sky Sports that reports solely on Bundesliga football. Let's look at Fabrizio Romano that's reporting on this as well. Everything at this moment in time is pointing to Newcastle wanting to make a significant signing in Benjamin Sesko. Newcastle United at this point are the firm team at the table. There is no one else at the table at this point. That may well change, and Man United may well come through the door. But at this moment, let's not stress about what's not there right now. Man United are not there right now. As you said, Chris, and I agree with you, Newcastle United, for whatever the bad summer has been right now, is still a pull. Opposition fans might well tell you we're not. Everyone might tell you that we've had a shit window, and we have, and we're rubbish, and we're in the mud, and this, that, and the other. But actually, we are still a pull. We're still a team that's on the up, a club that's going in the right direction. We're still a club that's playing Champions League football. We're still a club that put a trophy on the cabinet in March. Right? We're still a pull for big players to come and play for Newcastle United. We've got big players that are here: Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, Anthony Gordon, Sven Botman. We've got top level players that are playing for Newcastle United right now. So let's just not just jump on, another team's bidded for or interested in a player, he's going there. Let's just wait until we see, because all the noise this afternoon has been about Newcastle United and Benjamin Sesko. We are still a puller here. We are firmly at the table for Benjamin Sesko. And that was the point that I wanted to make, because that is the most important thing right now in that situation. But
Pete, just before we move on, I've got a couple more super chats that I just want to whiz through. So big thank you to Lad. Great name. Lad says, love the show, guys. Love the show as always, guys. Thank you very much, Lad. He's chosen that name purposely, hasn't he? Hey? Thank you very much, Lad. Can you give me your predictions for the rest of the window? Do we get what we need done? I'll be surprised if we do, to be honest. So let's assume that Lad is saying here, Pete, we get in. I'm going to set the bar for you, and you tell me whether or not we get it. So for me, we need two strikers. We either need two strikers and Alexander Isak goes, or we need one striker and Alexander Isak stays. We need a central midfielder, and we need a right centre-back. I'm going to park, I said this to you today, didn't I, Pete? I'm going to park the goalkeepers for now, because I think firmly we were after James Trafford, and obviously that deal has fell through our fingers. I don't expect, given that we've got 67 goalkeepers, I don't expect us to go out and sign another goalkeeper, being honest. Maybe now is not the right time to go and do that, given that we've got Nick Pope in between the sticks. We know that we've got Martin Dubravka. We know we've got Odysseus Vlachodimos. We know we've got John Ruzzi. We know we've got Mark Gillespie, and so on. So maybe goalkeeper isn't the priority. So what I'm asking you, Pete, is, are you confident that from now till the end of the window, we bring in at least one striker, two if Alexander Isak leaves, a central midfielder, and a right centre-back? Are you confident that we're going to do that between now and the end of the window?
I'm confident we're going to bring in two strikers. I'm confident we're going to bring in a right centre-back and a centre midfielder.
And I agree with you.
So that's 4 players. That's 5 overall, and I wanted 6. So that's 1 player down from what I wanted. I think maybe if a player leaves, look, I'm going to put it out there, Chris. I think we're going to go up to deadline day. I think the fact that we've been struggling so much in the early window, I think we're going to go to the wire. I think there's going to be deals where players leave towards the end of the window, and we will be sniffing in that market for any sort of deals that could be available. We still need left back cover, by the way, because like Alex Murphy, he played well today. I know he scored an own goal, but up until that, I thought he played well.
It was a great finish, Pete.
Yeah. I was frustrated with it, but it was a great finish, just in the wrong net. But I do think he probably needs another loan, if I'm being honest. But he's going in the right direction to being ready to potentially push for a first team start. I mean, I think he needs a full season at the club and then come back and we have a proper look at him at that point. But he did well today. But I do think when going into Champions League season, you need a little bit more of a sure thing of an option as a backup to Lewis Hall. I think Target needs to leave. I think we all agree on that one. So you're looking there as potentially your 6th signing there. But that's what I think. 4 signings, I'm confident that we'll make 2 strikers, midfielder, and a right centre-back. Who they are, it's up for discussion.
And
One of them has to be Sesko. One of them has to be Sesko.
Yeah. I'm going to add a little one to that. Do you think, not that this is time critical, because it's not, but do you think between now and the end of the window, do you think that we announce either one or both of a new CEO and sporting director?
You think we need to?
Do you think we will?
Absolutely. And look, I'll throw it up now because it was a side piece conversation. There were reports. I think, I can't remember where the piece was. I'm not sure if it was a Mark Douglas piece, but it said here Newcastle are close to announcing the appointment of David Hopkinson, formerly of Real Madrid, as chief executive CEO, and Ross Wilson, sporting director, currently of Nottingham Forest. And these 2 guys are supposedly the 2 that are coming through the door. For me, there'll be 2 excellent appointments with real kind of pedigree in the game. Speaking to Wolfie and other Forest fans, they don't want to lose him. He's been excellent for them. And of course, you got David Hopkinson, really, really well known in the game, did excellent at Real Madrid, particularly with their new build of the Bernabeu. And the Bernabeu is one of the best stadiums in the world with the revamp. And he had, I think, a significant role within that. And that fits nicely with the stadium talk, which still hasn't been talked about yet. We don't know when that's coming about. But I think he will have a say on that with those 2. So yes, to answer your question, Chris, I do think those deals will be done and done quite soon.
I'd love to see them done soon, Pete, because for me, and I love this in my own work, not suggesting I'm a CEO because I'm not, but I love when people come to me with a problem and say, Chris, can you fix this? Like, that's one of my strengths, to be able to just jump in and go, right, let's sort this out. What do we need to do? Who do we need to speak to? How do we do this? And let's look at the time frame. When does it need to be done by? And if I was the CEO, which I'm not, but if I was, the likes of these two fellas who were looking to bring in, I would thrive off that opportunity to come in and go, right, how do we fix this? Two very, very experienced guys who I'm sure have probably faced very, very similar, if not worse, situations. And that's why I think it's so key that they come in as soon as possible, so that they can come in, grab a hold of this situation and hopefully try and sort it out. Because it's not, like you said before, Pete, I really liked what you were talking about before, in the fact that we, as fans, we all get down in the dumps, don't we? And we look at the situation and we're all feeling a bit sorry for ourselves. We're all feeling a bit battered and bruised. But then there's so many positive things to look at. And you think this situation is easily rectifiable. It's not beyond repair. Even Alexander Isak's situation isn't beyond repair. It's not ideal. It's not great. But we can get through it. We've been through worse before, and we can do it again. But you need the right people in place. You can't expect Eddie Howe to do all of this on his own. You really, really can't. So for me, whilst I do agree that we will get in the players that we need, for me, I said at the start of the show, like the CEO and sporting director are so important. They really, really are. They're so important to, really set that direction and more importantly, to alleviate some of the some of the pressures and the stress from Eddie Howe, because he's seemingly under a lot at the moment. Probably him, Andy Howe, and Steve Nixon. It's too much. It really is. I'm going to quickly go to these super chats before we move on, Pete. Big Tank 9401, thank you very much again for the super chat, mate. Much appreciated. He says Man United should go for Nicholas Jackson, and I, for one, agree with that. Go and get Nicholas Jackson. Go and help yourself, Nicholas Jackson.
He's one of the other strikers that we will talk about, and I know we've got a few to go through. We might not cover all the topics that we wanted to cover tonight, but one thing I'll say, just to get onto that conversation, Jackson was added to the list, Nicholas Jackson of Chelsea. He was one of the players that was added to our list. For me, I don't want him anywhere near Newcastle United. I'll put it out there. What I will say is, in answer to that question from Big Tank, he was linked with Manchester United only just a few days ago. And there was serious interest from Man United in Nicholas Jackson. So even though we're or you're saying it Big Tank in jest, there could be a level of realism to that. And especially if we get Benjamin Sesko, that could be their next option in getting Nicholas Jackson. So even more reason why Newcastle United need to seal this deal for Sesko as soon as possible. But do I want him at Newcastle United? I genuinely don't. I don't want him at Newcastle United. I don't think he's the right type of player for us. He's proven himself as a bit of a hothead, more so than the likes of Pedro and one or two others, with the stupid red cards, the one against Botman and the one in the Club World Cup. When you've got Chelsea fans calling him a liability because of his temperament as well as his ability on the pitch, you don't want a player like that. And the fact that Chelsea are putting him with such a high price tag of something like 80 million, they're valuing him at, that for me should end that conversation there. The fact that he's been added to the list is a disgrace if they're valuing him that high, because he's not worth that type of money, in my opinion, nowhere near it. But what are your thoughts, Chris?
So Nicholas Jackson, he's certainly not near the top of my list, and he's certainly not a player who I would like to see us sign. However, what I will caveat that with is, I can almost kind of see why he's on the list if he is. And the reason I say that is because I think there's probably more to Nicholas Jackson, and I think he's got the raw materials. I remember when he first signed for Chelsea, I saw him in a friendly, and the first time I seen him play, I was like, yeah, I can see why they've signed him, because he's quick, he's strong, he's big, he's powerful. Now, over the course of the season, I thought, oh my God, constantly caught offside, makes really odd decisions. A player who, should be scoring more goals than what he does.
Yeah.
He actually, to be fair, he actually scored far more goals than what I thought he did. The reason I'm saying that if we were to sign it, obviously if we signed him, I'd get behind him, but I can see why he potentially is added to the list, in the sense that I think if a coach like Eddie Howe got hold of him and said, right, this all needs to stop, you need to focus on this, I think there could be a player within there. However, Pete, as you've just mentioned, he's nowhere near 70 million. He's nowhere near it.
80 million. They value. They got 80 million for him. Like Claire Jesus put in the chat. She's like, if we sign Jackson for 80 million, I swear, Claire, I'm with you. I'm with you because look, Chris, there was someone else in the chat. It was Mark. Mark put, "Don't, Chris," because you started. No. He was like, "Don't do it."
I know. I'm not all of a sudden going to be a Nicholas Jackson apologist. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm trying my best not to go there. But all I'm saying is, for the right price, it could be something we look at. But I'm talking like 30, 40 million. Like, there's no way I'd go to 80 million. It just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. And that's maybe why I'm wondering what if he is on the list, in the sense that, well, if we can get him for this price, we might ask the question. Because let's not forget, Chelsea didn't pay crazy money for him. So I wonder whether that figure's just been kind of floated out there. I'm pretty sure they got him for quite a reasonable fee, if I'm correct in thinking. So I do wonder whether, you know, say Chelsea signed him. I think it was between 20 and 25 million. I really don't think it was that much. I wonder if someone came in with 35 million, whether Chelsea just go, yeah, we'll have that. Thanks very much. And we'll roll them on. A bit like what they've done with João Felix. the Benfica have come in. Is it Benfica? I want to say Benfica. Is it Benfica who've come in for him?
No, he's going to Al Nassr.
Oh no, yeah, of course, yeah. Sorry,
Benfica. No, you're right though. Benfica. He was meant to go to Benfica.
Yeah,
the deal was agreed, and then Al Nassr have just gone and blown him out of the water. He's meant to go to Benfica for something really cheap. And then Benfica, Al Nassr are paying all in 50 million.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Man.
Well, we never will understand it, will we? But yeah, we'll move on from Nicholas Jackson. It's not going to happen, and they're certainly not going to get 80 million for him. So they're going to need to cut the price down, because that's just not. It's really not going to happen. And then the next super chat I just want to mention, Pete, and I think this is the last one. So I'm just going to quickly scale over this. And obviously we touched on this a little bit earlier. Oh, it's gone off my screen. But somebody put in the chat about the England women winning the Euros. So obviously, a big congratulations. I'm very, very sorry, whoever it was, because for some reason it disappeared off my screen. But it was a £5 donation from someone. Please do declare who it was, and thank you very much. Normally, we would be able to pull it up on screen, but as you know, YouTube's having technical issues.
I did see it, and I just can't remember who put it up, but it was a £5 super chat. And it was about England winning the Euros. So whoever it was, I apologize. We apologize. The chat cuts off at a certain point because we're checking it on our phones because YouTube's messed up and we can't see it on our screen. It went off our screen, so then we can't go any further up than that. So we apologize. But yeah, brilliant super chat. England, back-to-back Euros. Hopefully the boys can go and do the same next year. Let's see.
And Pete, just to jump in, Sophie B still flying in the chat. Well, Sophie B makes a really good point. Where is she? Where's Sophie? I've just seen it. And Sophie said, oh, where's Sophie's comment gone? I've literally just seen. Oh, here we go. We've got over 500 people in here, and we've only got 208 likes. Everybody, if you haven't already, hit that like button. It really helps us share the show far and wide. It's much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. It's much appreciated. I have a feeling, Pete, I don't know about you, but I have a feeling that we're going to be very busy this week on Loaded Mag NUFC. So if you hit that subscribe button, that will turn on a notification and it will let you know whenever our shows are live. So make sure that you do that because you don't want to miss any shows this week. Like I say, I expect us to be really busy this week. I know we've been saying that for 3 years, everyone, but we've got to get busy sooner or later. We have to. And this week feels like the week.
We broke the signing duck anyway because we got Alexander in, so that broke the duck. So we will sign more players. Don't worry about that, and we will be absolutely busy this week. There is more and more people actually, subscribers and members that are clicking the notification bell, so they are notifying themselves of when our shows are going live. So please do that, as Chris said, because it does make a massive difference, and means that you're right there in the chat, ready to go as we click the button to go live. Another player that we've been linked with, a player that is a lot closer to potentially being done than Nicholas Jackson, and it's this man, Yoan Wisa. Now, we hope that he's wearing the black and white of Newcastle United, or certainly I do. But, you know, his situation has took a little bit of a turn, or a twist and a turn, and we'll come onto that just now, because we knew that this weekend was going to be crucial in terms of the talks. Brentford had a personal matter, so they couldn't do the talks over Thursday and Friday, but they planned to do them over the weekend. And then we got from Ben Jacobs an exclusive that Brentford had closed the door on the Yoan Wisa exit after Newcastle raised their bid to 30+ million. It was actually 30 plus 5, so £35 million deal that Newcastle had bid. So it was pretty much a second bid, but Brentford kind of turned their nose up to that. In addition to that, Ben Jacobs then mentioned that Wisa was refusing to train with the club on the back of that second rejection bid. And that's going to add to a little bit of a kind of a story as part of this storyboard on Wisa. Keith Downey also reports the same. The bid was around 35 million. Wisa has told Brentford he doesn't intend to return to training as a result of Brentford locking off deals with Newcastle United, or locking off talks, should I say. It was then reported that Yoan Wisa threatens to never to play for the club again. That was BBC Sport that reported on that. Craig Hope also talks of him not playing for the club again. And he interestingly mentions it and asks the club to honour a promise from last year that he could leave this summer. Wisa wants, clearly, Newcastle United, no other club interested in him. He wants to sign for Newcastle United. And Craig Hope was told the deal is not over. There was a lot of negativity at that time because they thought, oh, another player that we've lost, another rejection. No, he wants Newcastle United. It's just that Brentford are stopping those talks. There was then reports of Neom FC in Saudi coming in with interest for Yoan Wisa, but that was quickly shut down from Tavalera, who reported that there is no chance he will sign for the Saudi club. It's then reported from Sami Mokbel, friend of the channel, that Yoan Wisa is not happy at all. Has had fiery talks with Phil Giles, a Newcastle United fan, and Geordie, who is the director of football at Brentford, and threatens not to play for the club again if he's not permitted his move to Newcastle United. In addition to that, consider the door shut, do Brentford, but Wisa is still holding on to the hope that that deal can be done. Once his promise of a move to a Champions League club is one of the things that he was promised as well. And it's one of the things that is why he wants to stay in Europe and not go to Saudi, because he wants to play European football and play at the highest level in the Champions League. Chris, what do you make of this situation? Do you think this deal will get done? Do you think this will get sorted soon? Will it drag out to the end of the window? Lots of questions there. What do you make of the situation based on that storyboard with Yoan Wisa?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Lots of similarities to the Alexander Isak deal, ironically. For me, Pete, to summarise quite briefly, because to me this is very simple. Yoan Wisa is not worth £50 million, in my opinion. He's just not. I would feel uncomfortable paying anything over 40 million. I still think 40 million is a really good deal for Brentford. I understand why Brentford want to maximise the money that they bring in for Yoan Wisa, because he had a very, very good season last season, as we discussed on the last show. 19 goals, and bearing in mind none of those were penalties. So when you compare that to the other players within the league, the likes of Salah, Haaland, Isak, and Bermo, they all finished above Yoan Wisa, but they all had penalties added to their tally. So Yoan Wisa actually comes out pretty well when you consider that all his goals were from open play. For me, Pete, I think this is a case of if, not when. Sorry, wrong way around. I think this is a case of when, not if. To me, I feel like the deal will get done. I think it's a matter of time. I think Yoan Wisa's stance probably isn't helping Brentford at all. Brentford are just trying to, as I said earlier, maximise the value that they can drag in for this player. If they've made a verbal communication to him last season that he could go for 26 million, a little bit naughty that they're going back on that word. Although, in fairness to the owners, There's nothing in writing, which is the first thing. And also, things have changed. Brentford, I understand Brentford's stance. They've lost the manager, they've lost the captain, they've lost the top scorer. That's gonna have an impact ultimately. So I do get that Brentford want to try and hang on to him as much as they possibly can, but I just can't see this going any other way. What Brentford's probably appreciate and understand is that this is probably Yoan Wisa's last big move. Yoan Wisa moving to Newcastle United, playing Champions League football, that's going to be the pinnacle of his career. That's not me just saying that because I'm a Newcastle United fan. That's just stating the fact. Because if Yoan Wisa joins Newcastle United and plays Champions League football and stays for 2 or 3 years, he's only then going to move down. He's not going to move up again. This is the last big move for him. So I can understand why he wants the move. I think it would be a really shrewd signing from Newcastle United because you're bringing in someone who's Premier League experienced, someone who knows where the back of the net is. So I can see why Newcastle United want him, absolutely. But we cannot pay anywhere near 50 million for Yoan Wisa. He's just not worth that amount of money. He's 29 years old in September, and he's only got 1 year left on his deal. So to me, as much as 40 million still feels a bit steep, I appreciate that you have to pay a premium. And if we were to go and buy Yoan Wisa for 40 million and we had him for the next 3 or 4 years, I think it would turn out to be a pretty decent deal for Newcastle United. You only have to look back at Callum Wilson, who was recently released. People like myself, by the way, were complaining that we didn't take any money for Callum Wilson. We didn't get any money for Callum Wilson. But then you look back and you think, well, we paid £20 million for him, and look at the output we got. Look at what we got from Callum Wilson. So the £20 million was money well spent. And I think we'll eventually look back on this Yoan Wisa deal and go, do you know what? It was what we needed at the time. It was money well spent. We need someone to come in and replace Callum Wilson. We need somebody who, can come in and replace the main guy up front, whether that's Alexander Isak, whether that's Benjamin Sesko, whoever it may be. You need somebody who is a capable understudy or somebody who can come on and affect a game with 15, 20 minutes to go. That's what you need. And if you've got to pay 40 million for it, so be it. Prices have gone absolutely ridiculous this season, haven't they? It wouldn't be the worst signing. I've had Liverpool and Everton fans saying to me that it will be a good signing, and always a good sign is when the Everton fans are saying that that you're being there, you're being there, you're having your pants pulled down because it's too much money. That just screams of the fact that they know it's a good signing. It will be a good signing. Yoan Wisa coming to Newcastle United will be a good signing. He's slightly overpriced, but I think it's a deal that happens. And I think it's, that could be one, Pete, as you mentioned earlier, that could be one that goes right to the end of the window. Because ultimately, Brentford don't want to keep a player who's unhappy. And Brentford could do with the money. But Brentford maybe are in the same position that we're in with Alexander Isak and that they're trying to find a replacement. But you will find very, very quickly that all of a sudden Brentford will announce a striker joins the club, and I think shortly after Yoan Wisa will become a Newcastle United player.
I think Yoan Wisa is a very underrated striker. I think people are kind of not people, not us, and not necessarily people in our chat, but there is a lot of fans, whether they're Newcastle fans or not, that are turning their nose up at Yoan Wisa. I think he is a striker of the skill set that we absolutely need to add to our team, add to our squad. Do I think he's going to be the Isak replacement in the leading line striker? Absolutely not. But is he a player, like you said, Chris, just a second ago, that can come off the bench and influence the game? Absolutely. Is he a striker that, in my opinion, in the Champions League, where we, in my opinion, and I believe that we're going to play a slightly different system and formation, can he start alongside our main striker, hopefully Sesko, Isak, depending on who it is, and play in the same team as our main striker? Absolutely. And play in tandem? Definitely. Can he score goals in the Premier League? 100%. 19 goals last season. He's already proven it. We talked about this on the last show, Chris. Within the top 6 scorers last year, there's a potential of having Wisa and Isak, if he stays, or Wisa and the top young European striker in Benjamin Sesko partnering together. That's the potential right there. And I think he's being slept on if I'm being honest. Not necessarily by us, but by other fans and other people that don't necessarily rate him because he's not a name. He's not a big name. He's not a Brian Mbremo big name. He's still a quality player. I don't care. I've said it before, Chris. I'll say it again. I don't care that he's 29 in September. I want a player for now. I want us to hit the ground running next season. I want us to have a really good season and hit the ground running and aim towards Champions League football again. So we've had, 2 years now of Callum Wilson that's barely kicked a ball, scored 1 goal in the FA Cup last season. As much as we love the guy, that's not enough. We want someone that can be an alternative that can put a performance in and make the difference in our team. Yoan Wisa can do that. I do agree with you. He's not a £50 million player, and if it's 50 million or no deal, then for me it's no deal. I think we go elsewhere to get our alternative striker. But if you're asking me, do we pay 35 or upwards of 40 million to get him to do that deal? I would genuinely do that deal. I absolutely would. I think Yoan Wisa, we could get 3, maybe 4 years out of him playing as that alternative striker, being an impact and an effect in the game for Newcastle United for 3 or 4 years. And if we get that, great. Callum Wilson was here, 5 years or so? And he got 49 goals. If we get Yoan Wisa, that's injury record is better than Callum Wilson's, and we get him here and the opportunity to score goals, I think he wouldn't be too far off that by the time he leaves the club. So I think it's a deal that has to happen. I think the fact that he wants the deal, he wants to play for Newcastle United, the fact that reporters are saying, and Craig Hope and others, that the deal is still there to be done, I do believe it gets done. I don't want to be waiting until the end of the window, though. I don't want to be waiting until the end of the window. I want this deal done within the next week or two. It's very clear, Will Asula runs hard, tries hard, still a young player, still got room to grow. But it's very clear that we need 2 strikers in, and we need 2 strikers in very quickly, because we need to make sure that those strikers are embedded in the team, they know how we play, and that they're ready to go before the season starts. It starts in 3 weeks' time. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done quickly. The question marks about his way in which he's going about the deal, or to get the deal done for Newcastle United. Yes, I agree. It's not ideal. It's not great. But, he wants to play for Newcastle United. I can't begrudge that. I cannot begrudge that.
And you know what, Pete? Without sounding like I'm, defending Wisa, but I'm, attacking Isak. As much as there's similarities, there are 2 different things at play here. He's had a gentleman verbal agreement that he can go for £26 million, and he's seen Newcastle United bid 30 plus 5 million, and the club have gone, no, not for sale, I want 50. That's nearly double what they said that they would agree to let him go for. And this is a player who's, as you rightly said, is approaching 29. This is his last big move.
Yeah.
If Alexander Isak doesn't get the move to Liverpool, Alexander Isak will end up staying at Newcastle United probably for another year and getting a move to another top European club at some point. Alexander Isak's not going to be left on the scrap heap. Yoan Wisa, if he stays at Brentford for another year and Brentford end up going down, that's going to have huge ramifications on Yoan Wisa.
And Chris, that's the key, is that he's then going into a team next season with a brand new manager, with a team that's lost its top goal scorer.
Yeah.
They've got the captain's and gone to Arsenal. So they've got lots of big changes there. If he goes back to Brentford and they have a poor season and they're bottom half, no Champions League club's taking a risk on him. No. That's his opportunity, as you've said. That's his opportunity gone. It's gone. It's down the drain. So he's looking at that and he's going, right, as we've mentioned and as been reported, you've talked about it as well. There was a promise made to him, whether it was a verbal promise or written promise, it doesn't matter. Promise was made to him that this summer he could go. Newcastle United are in for him. They're offering nearly 10 million or over 10 million more, or around 10 million more than what it was agreed that he could leave for. And now they're rejecting that. So he's like thinking in his mind, this is it. I need to leave now. It's Champions League or nothing.
Yeah.
This is it. And I get it. And I get it. I understand it. I absolutely understand it. I don't agree with how players sometimes go about their business, but I do understand it. We said about how we understand from Isak's position when we talked about that situation earlier. We understand why he's doing what he's doing. We don't necessarily agree with it. We're the same with Wisa. It's the same situation. Obviously, the difference is that you're doing it for Newcastle United. So regardless of what you think as a Newcastle United fan, you're always going to accept it to a certain point because it's coming to your club or wanting to join your club. And there is going to be an element of that. Like we'd be lying to if there wasn't that element of it too. So let's wait and see on that situation. Any questions? Any comments? We haven't got any. I've got just a couple of things.
We probably have, but we can't.
Yeah, probably got loads of questions.
Is what we're saying. Yeah,
exactly. A couple of things that we'll touch on before we wrap up, Chris.
Pete, sorry, just a quick one. I've just noticed, and again, apologies, chat. We literally can't see anything, but we have had another super chat. And it's from Big Tank 9401. Big chat, Big Tank, you've been flying in with the super chats this evening, mate. Thank you so much. Big Tank says Brentford will lose out on money if we don't get Wisa this summer. Absolutely. It's exactly what we were just saying then, Big Tank. Totally agree. If Brentford have a really, really poor season, or God forbid, Brentford end up going down, they can kiss goodbye to that 35 million for Yoan Wisa. It just won't happen. Not to mention, he's not going to sign a new deal, and then he potentially can leave on a free. But then to Brentford lose out, and Yoan Wisa is going, I can go on a free. Where am I going? No Champions League clubs are going to go in for Yoan Wisa because he'll probably be off the back of quite a average season, it would be fair to say. Because if Yoan Wisa was to score 19 goals next season, Brentford probably wouldn't be in the bottom half of the league or maybe flirting with relegation. So if Yoan Wisa only scores, say, 7 goals, who's going to be interested in him then? Not a Champions League club, I would say.
No, I agree. I agree. Even more of the reason why we need to get that deal done. A couple of things before we wrap up, and there's a few people wanting us to talk about a certain topic, so we will come to that before we wrap up. We talked about Nicholas Jackson before. In the Mail Online, Craig Hope talked about the alternatives for Alexander Isak, and it was talked about Sesko, it talked about Wisa. We talked about those earlier on in the show, but it mentioned Nicholas Jackson. We've talked about him, but the other one, interestingly, was Ollie Watkins. Chris, do you see Ollie Watkins as a viable option for Newcastle United this summer, as he has been added to the list? I did mention earlier, Manchester United were in talks with Ollie Watkins just at the back end of last week. That seems to have gone a little bit quiet now. It does look like Villa, who are, in fact, and we talked about this privately, Villa are the only club in the Premier League that haven't signed a player. They've not signed anybody. And it looks very much like, and we predicted it, that their wage bill and the money that they've spent is coming back to haunt them, because it looks like they have to sell before they buy. They're in a difficult moment right now. But going back to Watkins, Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's a viable option? Do you think it's a real option? Do you think Newcastle would look at that at any point?
For the right price, I would be interested. But again, it kind of has Yoan Wisa vibes about it. People in the chat there saying, which is a really good point, Ollie Watkins is 30 this year, and Ollie Watkins is a very good player, and I think he would be perfect for Eddie Howe's, formation tactics. I think he would suit the Eddie Howe system really, really well. My only problem is I don't know whether Villa would be comfortable accepting probably 40, 45 million for Ollie Watkins, and that's probably what I would pay for them. I think they would probably be wanting north of 60 million, and I just don't think that is worth it. I actually think, Pete, not to throw another name out there, but I actually think if I was an Aston Villa fan and you were hoping to keep all of your players, the two that I would be keeping an eye on between now and the end of the window would be Emi Martinez and Morgan Rogers. Yeah. I think they're the two that are most likely to leave. You could throw in Ezri Konsa into that argument as well. But I think in order for Villa to spend, and that's certainly the impression we're getting, and from what we're hearing previously about PSR troubles, etc., it could be that they need to sell big in order to have room to spend some money. And the only way that you're going to sell big is by selling the big player. And that's why I think that the likes of Emi Martinez and Morgan Rogers could be players who could leave between now and the end of the window.
It's going to be interesting. You talked about the fee. 60 million, I think, is the fee that they want for Ollie Watkins. It's a huge fee. I think that would, if we went for him, look, I'm not arguing. He's a good player. His numbers are really, really good. So I'm not arguing the player. But as you said, just about to turn 30, I think 60 million is a huge fee. If we don't want to pay 50 million for a Yoan Wisa that's got 19 goals and that's 28 currently years old, then you're not going to want to pay 60 million for a player that's just turned or about to turn 30 off the back of that as well. But I think he will become a player that we look at if, for example, Sesko doesn't work out. I'm looking at this situation. I'm looking at Sesko. I'm looking at Wisa. I'm looking at Jackson. I'm looking at Watkins. You have to have a front line main striker replacement to come in for Alexander Isak. And you're not going to replace Alexander Isak with a like-for-like because he's just unique. He's irreplaceable. Sesko, for me, is a different type of striker, but he's a highly profiled striker and one that's wanted across Europe. So that's a big statement there. I think Nicholas Jackson is not that guy. He's not an Isak replacement. You are seriously, significantly downgrading if you buy him. So he's not part of that conversation. With Watkins, though, I think it is. If Sesko doesn't come through, I actually think Watkins needs to be the viable option. And only at that point, I think we need to pay that money to get him in. But that will be because we're in the last knock-ins here. When you look around away from Sesko as a mainline, frontline, number 9 striker, when you look around you and what's available after Sesko, there's not a lot.
Eddie Howe constantly says, Pete, we're not just going to buy players for the sake of buying players. It's got to be a player that comes in and can improve the existing squads. Now, I know some people will be tongue-in-cheek. They'll be laughing, going, well, we haven't got anybody, so it's going to be an improvement, which is quite right. But you don't want to sign someone on 40, 50, 60 million who you don't really want and who you're going to be going in 12 months' time, oh, he's a bit shit, we need to get rid of him. But they won't leave because they're on 150 grand a week and you paid 60 million for them and nobody else will buy them. That's the problem. But
this is the thing. And if you're letting Isak go, you then come into desperation mode because you're going to have to buy someone to replace him. If you can't get Sesko, he's going to have to become an option. So, and this is the thing, right? We're not really, Newcastle are not a club that does that. That has a desperation type signing. Eddie Howe doesn't. You've touched on it. But I think we'd have to go into that motion if that was the case. And I don't think it gets that far. I do think we either buy Sesko or we keep Isak. I think it's one of the two things. But if anything else didn't work out, I think Watkins is then the next one in line. So he's the next one in line after Sesko, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I see it at this moment in time. I don't think he's a viable option right now, but he will become it if the noises on Sesko this week don't go the way we want it to. But let's wait and see on that one, because that one could, well, become something later on down the line. But in my opinion, in your opinion, Chris, not quite yet. The last one from me is this one. And lots of people have mentioned it. People in the chat are talking about it already. And it's this one. Really, really interesting. And it's got Lawless spitting feathers. And it's the news on, it was reported by the Mail Sport that a bid in the region of 30 million in this window for Lucas Paqueta could be enough to convince West Ham to part with the Brazilian. Now, it's interesting because after this piece, Chris, it actually, in addition, talks about the fact that it could be as less or as low as 25 million that they are willing to accept for Lucas Paqueta to leave. Now, for those in the chat and people that are watching that might think, oh, but he's got the betting thing hanging over his head. Oh, he's got that. Why would we spend that money on him and blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Well, it was reported in the last 24, 48 hours that it is expected tomorrow to be ruled that he is acquitted and is being kind of let off on the betting scandal that could have potentially ended his career. He's apparently got off from that, and he's not going to be facing any charges off the back of that. So he's basically innocent, is what they're reporting, and it's going to be finalized tomorrow. So you're not signing someone that's got the betting scandal over his head. It's actually gone, and it could be gone for as less as 25 million. We've just talked about Chris earlier on in the show. We need a midfielder. We need someone to come in and replace the mold of Sean Longstaff. And we've got room for another Brazilian? That's my question to you, fella.
Mate, the reason I have my head in my hands, for anyone listening to this on Spotify, the reason I have my head in my hands was because, to me, this feels like hope, not cake hope. This feels like a marquee signing that just makes sense for so many reasons. Like, I'm still a bit unsure, Pete, as to why the value's so low, and I am a little bit skeptical of that. I'm not going to lie, because that feels really low. And I know that West Ham are probably a bit like, right, we've had it now. You know, we want to claw some money back, and we want to cut our cloth, so to speak. But that does feel really low. But even if Lucas Paqueta cost you 40 million, you've got to be interested. You have to be interested. And there's so many reasons why I'm keen on this deal. The first one being the fact that his best mate is Bruno Guimaraes. That to me is a huge thing. And some people will go, "Oh, you can't just sign players' mates," but bringing in a player who's going to settle straight away and just feel at home is a great start. And not to mention he's going to be friends with Joe Linton. So that's obviously going to play its part as well. How long have we been talking, Pete, about bringing in a central midfielder who can unlock doors? That player with that little bit of magic, that little bit of fairy dust, who can just, gets the ball. Not necessarily a player who's incredibly quick, not necessarily a player who, is going to run round all day for you, but a player who you can give the ball to, and on the turn of a sixpence, he can just see out the corner of his eye, little ball, nobody else sees the pass, straight through to the striker, goal, straight through to the winger, goal. That's Lucas Paqueta. There's no coincidence that Man City went big on him. Man City went in big for him. They had the bid accepted. He was all but going there, all for these betting charges. Now, some people will joke and say, it might be good for him to come to Newcastle United, given one of our upcoming players who has a previous in this forte, but we won't go there. But no, in all seriousness, I would love Lucas Paqueta. And I think Lucas Paqueta is the exact type of player that we would need. And, talking again about integration, about him coming in, feeling settled, getting used to the Eddie Howe way, but he's that player who brings that extra touch of class. And if you've got the opportunity to bring that player in, why not do the deal? So, yeah, for me, mate, 100%. 100%. What better way to distract from Alexander Isak? What better way?
It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. You get this deal done if it's there to be done. 25 to 30 million. You've got someone that's already got experience in the Champions League. You've got someone that's experienced in the high levels, playing major tournaments for Brazil. He is the number 10 alternative option as well. So we talked about having a player that can play in the number 10 and the number 8 and affect games. We've got the defensive side of our game sorted, but we're missing that player that can unlock from that number 10 position in that little mold. We talked about the Edes and the Maketes and the Xavi Simons, the players that can play in between that, the striker and the number 8 midfield. He can find positions in there that can make the difference. He did it for West Ham before the betting things affected him. And it's clear that the betting affected him. But what we've got now is a player potentially that's clear of that mind and ready to play football. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Bruno, Joe, get on the phone, let things do its natural course and get him to Newcastle United. West Ham fans are fuming at the thought of losing him. We should be buzzing at that. Chris, that's how we're going to end the show tonight, because we want to hit that 2-hour button. So make sure you hit the likes on the way out. People, absolute pleasure, as always, to talk all things Newcastle United with you. We may well be back tomorrow. We may well be back on Tuesday. keep the notification bell tagged, because we'll be back for more very, very soon. But until then, we are out of here, and we're going to be out of here with the Radiator Shed, our fantastic sponsor. Take care, people. Enjoy your Sunday.